back after passing North Farm that we had a look at last time. There's a short section where we cross over Rains Brook, which interestingly doesn't seem to go out of its way, presumably because the lay of the land was already suitable. After a relatively straight stretch of original canal, we start following the contours again, and while there's not much in the contour heights, a couple of feet was enough for some diversions. Take a sharp left and wander around the back of these trees, past where Barbie Wharf was, and cross the canal to do a short loop on what is now the towpath side before heading away from the straight and stretch again. There's a curve that goes through and reaches eventually where Barbie Marina is, although there doesn't seem to be an exact piece of water in the marina that matches with the canal route. It then curved back around, crossed at right angles, and took a tortuous route all the way around this hill. After passing Whitehall Farm, it crosses the cutting once again, just after the M45 bridge. While there's no sign of it next to the canal, you only have to go into the next field to see the remnants of the old canal again. And here at the Banks Fishery, you can actually fish along a part of the original Oxford Canal route. It crossed the road and you can just see a slight dip and some taller grasses, which mark the original route of the canal. What's interesting is that as you go between new and old sections, you can see the changes in the way that the bridges are designed, and there is not only a difference in the brick and the size of the bridges, but on the old bridges the edging seems to be made of stone, whereas on the newer bridges it's a couple of rows of bricks. We follow the original route for a little while until we get to a curious little bit where there is a brook, and again, rather than just crossing it straight off, we follow the contours up a little way before having a small aqueduct over. We cross the canal once again and take a luxurious detour . The linear feature you see crossing over the old route of the canal is actually the Great Central Railway, and of course the canal was closed by the time this was built, so they didn't need to worry about bridges at this point. The canal follows the contours all the way around this very small hill. The cutting's not all that deep, and as you can see, a large amount of it is still in water. I don't know if it's used for drainage or fishing, but there doesn't seem to be any public access to it. crosses over this field, you can just about see a darker stretch where it rejoins the canal somewhere near them trees. Again, we've got another sharp bend back onto the original route. So it gives you some idea of just how twisty and bendy the original route was in places. We follow the original route of the canal all the way to Braunston now. But eventually we reach what is possibly the most confusing junction on the canal, if not on the canal system. To the right is the continuation of the Oxford Canal. So if this is the Oxford Canal, why am I turning right at a junction? This is actually a new cutting, and as we continue through Braunston, we're actually going along the old route of the canal. This is the original route. The main reason this part of the old canal is still in water is that it gives access to the Grand Junction Canal, which when it was built in 1796 connected to the canal on this corner. Originally, since the Oxford Canal was a narrow canal, there was a stop lock very much like the one at Streatham, which much after the straightening was opened out to allow wide vessels through. After the stop, the canal took a right angle, like many other parts, to cross the Bagborough stream. And this is what it would be like to go along a lot of the old sections where you would be following a valley and all of a sudden take a sharp bend to cross that valley, and once you're the other side of the valley, another sharp bend to follow the contours again. And here, the other side of the A45, the large linear feature at the top of the picture is the Leamington and Weedon Railway. You can just about see in this field the original course of the canal. It's been flattened a little bit, but it's not been completely obliterated, and I think some of it might provide some drainage for the field perhaps. So as you can see, the yellow stretch of the old canal swings round and does a snake-like route along the edge of the valley. We then have to cross over a stream, and we have a second stream, so we have two large loops to get around. Again, this stretch is in partial water, but I suspect it's providing drainage for the fields, and this was shot earlier in the year when we had some rain. The canal really snakes along this stretch of the hills. The canal follows the valley of the River Leam, while some of the canal and embankment has been lost to the fields, crossed at right angles, and followed this route back down the other side of the valley for a little while before having to head up a new valley, which was just a small stream that fed the River Leam. After crossing that small brook, it heads back towards Wolfhampcut. Wolfhampcote Hall, the landowner wanted to not have his view blighted by the canal, and also to try and keep the urchins from the canal off his land. So there was a small tunnel in front of the hall. This is still, as far as I can tell, existent. On the other side of that short tunnel, the canal is in partial water and crosses the new cut for heading all the way round the backside of the hill, eventually reaching the in-water original course. There were some small improvements further south. One of these was the opening up of the Fenny Compton tunnel, which is the only reason that stretches straight, and there were some new bridges placed. But I think the Oxford Canal very quickly realised that the bulk of the traffic was going to be on the North Oxford. The original route from what is now the new connection to Coventry to the marina at Braunston used to be 33.5 miles. With the cuttings, that dropped it down to 22.5, saving of 11 miles. And if you include the Wolfhampcote bend, the total distance to the end of that loop was originally 36.4 miles, and that dropped down to 23.9 miles. So there was a huge saving by doing this. There was also a lot of other improvements that were done at the same time. The canal was widened in places, and I'm not sure if it was deepened at this point, but certainly the 1930s improvement increased the depth in various places. Due to the increase in traffic, later the locks at Hill Morton were doubled, and these are special locks that were designed to close the gates when you open the paddles, and they're extra fast filling. I hope you've enjoyed this look at a forgotten waterway. There are many canals that have fallen into disuse, but here the canal was intentionally put into disuse and the infrastructure removed to avoid having to maintain it. So there's not much left of the old aqueducts, but it's nice to see that still some of it exists in water. So next time you're travelling along the Oxford Canal, have a thought of how many more miles you might have ended up doing had it not been for some forward thinking by the Oxford Canal Company.
Oh, the mist hangs heavy on Wolfhampcote Bend, where the water would wander like an old aimless friend. I remember the wharfs where the coal heaps would pile, and the cut that would stretch out for many a long mile. Now the banks are grown over, the basins are dry, and the ghost of a village now passes us by. The silence is heavy where the hammers once rang, as we cut through the hill where the blackbirds once sang. Oh, the loops are all lost to the weeds and the silt, and the miles vanish fast that our forefathers built. But the journey is shorter, the day is soon done, as we're chasing the light of the fast setting sun. My old horse is quite steady, his spirit is high, for the straight path is easy neath the Warwickshire sky. It used to be torture on the poor creature's knees, while pulling round corners and under low trees. The tow rope would pull on the bridle line fair, and you'd push the ellum as far as you dare. But just look now, with a trot in his pace, with no more jagged turns for my beauty to face. The old small brick bridges don't mock us no more, as we glide past the places all bustling before. Oh, the loops are all lost to the weeds and the silt, and the miles vanish fast that our forefathers built. But but the journey is shorter, the day is soon done, as we're chasing the light of the fast setting sun. My old horse is quite steady, his legs feel no strain, for we've cut out the curves and we've eased all his pain. The cattle at Nettleville look down from hills steep at the dry, hollow bed where the waters ran deep. They low for a drink where the channel is now dry, as we take the new cut and we pass them all by. No more legging through Newbold, that dark narrow hole that broke a man's spirit and weathered his soul. Now the tunnel is wide with a path for the old bay, and we walk through the hill into the light of the day. Oh, the loops are all lost to the weeds and the silt, and the miles vanish fast that our forefathers built. But the journey is shorter, the day is soon done, as we're chasing the light of the fast setting sun. My old horse is quite steady, he keeps to the line, for the tunnel is open and the weather is fine. I miss all the taverns like the White Lion Inn, with the boatmen's loud din and the tales we would spin. Now the world has grown smaller, more hurried and cold, and they're selling the silver to keep all the gold. Yet I'll be home early to my wife and my bed, with a few less gray hairs on this weary old head. The cargo moves faster, the gauging is right, and Braunston is calling through the falling of night. Oh, the loops are all lost to the weeds and the silt, and the miles vanish fast that our forefathers built. But the journey is shorter, the day is soon done, as we're chasing the light of the fast setting sun. My old horse is steady, the water is clear, and we've gained back the hours we lost through the year. Oh, the loops are all lost to the weeds and the silt, and the miles vanish fast that our forefathers built. But the journey is shorter, the day is now done, as we're chasing the light of the fast setting sun. My old horse is quite steady, he's earned his warm hay, for the new Oxford line has now shortened the way.